Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of the Australian Association of Street Photographers Speaker Series for 2021. My name is Russell Mason, Vice President of AASPI and host for tonight. If you can keep your devices set to mute during tonight's presentation, we'll avoid background noise. That would be great. And if you have any questions during tonight's session, please type them into the chat function. I'll pose your questions as we go along. So tonight's guest speaker, we're excited to have Melbourne-based photographer Chris Brown, or many of you may know him as Zunabar. Chris is a well-travelled and long-time street photographer, having exhibited his work in quite a few sit-home exhibitions and in the past, and is also, or has been, a member of the AASPI committee. More recently, though, Chris was the winner of the Perimeter Book best self-published photo book and Third's Fine Art Printing Most Highly Resolved Concept Awards in the 2020 Ilford Centre of Contemporary Photography Salon, the online exhibition. With he won these awards with his photo book 27 711. So tonight's talk is titled "Creating My First Photo Book: A Journey." So there's no prizes for guessing what he's going to talk about. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Zunabar. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Russell. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yeah.
Yep, that's a yes. And you can see the presentation? Just give me a thumbs up. Good. All right. So this is just going to be what Russell just said. Oh yeah, I'm Zunabar everywhere on Flickr, Instagram. I've got a website. Most of that stuff is out of date except for Instagram, really. So, if you want to see anything, sort of go there. And it's exactly what Russell just said. I've, AASPI member, been in Sit-Hom a few times, mainly street photography, occasionally do stuff like, I've done sport and things like that, but 99.9% is street photography. So just sort of a rundown of what I'm going to talk about, which is how the book sort of came about. A little bit of background on typologies, because this is not a book about street photography, which is funny because I just said I'm a street photographer, and the first book I did was not on street photography, but that's sort of life. Things that I learned, and if anyone's got any questions, I think give me a thumbs up, Russell. Normally what people put questions in the chat and then we go through them at the end. Does that sound okay? Cool. And yeah, I guess one thing is, I've done one book, so I'm not an expert. This is just, what I did. A few things I picked up on along the way, things I didn't expect. Things were easier than I thought, harder than I thought, that sort of thing, So, don't take me as any expert on someone who's, when it comes to publishing books and stuff like that, just, this is just what I did, and, it may not work for you, and it may not even work for my next book. And it seems like that is going to be the case for my next book. There are a lot of things I learned, I'm going to have to sort of relearn them or change. So, yeah, I guess, if you want an expert who's done, 40 books like Martin Parr, that's, not me. So this is the book. Can you see me as well as the presentation? You can, right? Is that right? Yeah. So that's the book. You can see it's small A5, soft cover, pretty thin. That was kind of intentional, I guess, just not to go too hardcore, for my first book, just do something small. It was done by Memento Pro because I thought that would be easier, and it was relatively easy too. So, I didn't have to go to printers, and of course it was done in lockdown. So it was, getting to a printer would have been hard anyway, or, talking to too many people. So I did it sort of all online. I didn't, apart from emails, I didn't even really talk to them directly. So, that just will give you some background of, sort of how it went. Some background. So like I said, this is, it isn't a book about street photography. It's about, it's a typology, which I'll talk about as well, but also I guess some background as to, why I decided to do this book. So in 2007, so this is really the genesis of the book. So in 2007, I was watching a documentary, which I've just started rewatching because I found it on Vimeo, which is called The Genius of Photography, which is put out by the BBC, and it's 6 hours. So, it's pretty hardcore. They go through the history of all types of photography from, the start up until sort of modern days, if you like. And if you can find it, I would watch it. I think it's a good series. But if you want to watch like one particular episode, I would watch episode 4, which is covers street photography, covers Gary Winogrand, William Klein, John Meyerowitz, those sorts of things. Stuff that street photographers would be into. And it's called Paper Movies. So in that episode, they talked about one photographer which I hadn't heard about, which is Ed Ruscha. And he's probably not that well known as a photographer, more as a artist, printmaker, painter, but he did some photography as well. So they talked about him in that documentary. And this is sort of the stuff that he's known for, which is big sort of stenciled paintings of petrol stations. He recently has done things like, because he was a printmaker to start with, so a lot of things to do with like big bold text is what he's also famous for. Actually, just let me go back a step. So I guess the one thing that he did do was for his photography stuff is he shot it really fast. So I'll show one of the books that he said he did in a day. So this is every building on the Sunset Strip. So he basically put a camera on the back of a truck, drove down the Sunset Strip, and just shot it in a day, and then made a book out of it. So that was sort of his style. He did other things like, drove down the road in a car and threw a typewriter out the window and then photographed all the pieces on the ground. So it's a bit sort of out there, I guess. So, so in that documentary, it was kind of like he sort of seemed a bit different to all the rest of the photographers. They talked about street photographers in fashion, and then this guy was just like, just way out there kind of thing. So the one book that they did talk about a bit, and here's his most famous photography book, is called 26 Gasoline Stations. So he lived in LA, but he was from Oklahoma City, so he was continually driving back and forth, and he just took photos of the gas stations along sort of Route 66. So inside this is kind of what it looks like. It's pretty plain. It's just gas stations, what brand they are, and where he took it. Pretty straightforward. And you can see, like, some of them, he looks like he didn't even get out of the car. He's just like shot through the window and taken those sort of photos. And it's like, so I'm looking at this going, oh, that looks like crap. Like, I don't know anything about photography or art, but this to me, this was like, how is this photography kind of thing? So and sort of at the time, sort of the critics were in a lot of ways the same. It was like, what is this? He put it up to go into the Library of Congress, and they just sent it back and said, we don't get it. There's no information in there. It's just a bunch of, petrol stations. But as you can see, it's like, it's sold for $3 now. It sells for $10,000 to $15,000. So it became like a cult book in the 60s. So this was kind of the inspiration. At the time, I'm going like, I don't get it. And my reaction was, well, I'm going to create a boring book of shit photos of 7-Elevens. And that was it. That was in 2007. I just sort of, planted that seed in my mind that that's what I should do. And that was it, and sort of nothing happened. And then 13 years later, we had a pandemic and lockdowns and things like that. So my normal thing would be to, go into the CBD on the weekend, try and take some street shots. And then in the first few weeks of the lockdown, it was like nobody was around. It was empty. It became really hard to get any good shots. So I thought, oh, maybe I should, see if I can take photos of 7-Elevens, because, the streets would be empty. People wouldn't sort of get in the way. So I did a few different sort of test shoots, different cameras, different angles, to see if I sort of got anything I liked. I probably wasn't that impressed at the start that, I should even sort of do it. Then I started to do some research about which 7-Elevens I should do. And it worked out that there were actually 27 7-Elevens in the CBD, just by chance. So it was kind of like the universe was telling me, well, just do it. And of course, lockdown, you can't do much. I'm within 5 Ks of the CBD. So I thought, I'm going to do it. Let me have a drink. So as I was, starting to do the test shots, I did a bit of research about Ed Richet as well, and I wasn't sort of that happy with the sort of shots I was getting. And I sort of discovered this genre, but you guys, some of you might know about it. It's called typologies, which is, it's been around for a long time. I didn't know this either. It's basically comes down to, sometimes it can be really sort of just straightforward recording of boring facts in a sort of mundane sort of way. Sometimes it can be something more artistic. And I guess the power of a typology is the fact that it's a collection of images, not a single image. So it's putting a lot of images that are almost the same next to each other. I've got a few examples. So this is an old one. Francis Dalton is, believe it or not, is a cousin of Charles Darwin. And he was basically photographing criminals to see if they had particular features. Now, I know this is probably ethically pretty bad, but this is one of the earlier ones. So I thought I'd sort of throw that in there. And I mean, it's sort of well known that the Nazis did this as well. So, so ethically, it's, it started off in a bad light, I guess. In the 60s, these Bert and Hilda Brescher, they're a German couple, and they're really like the Cartier-Bresson of this field. They're like considered the masters. They did a lot of industrial sort of shots of these are mine shafts. They did water towers, but you can see, and they generally tended to present them in this way too, like in a big grid. But you can see just the consistency of them, just the angles, the lighting, and just the way they've sort of arranged them. And you can see if you just took one photo like that, you'd probably go, yeah, that's pretty boring. But if you put a few of them together, it sort of becomes something. I know this isn't street photography, so if anyone wants to go away, they can do that, that's fine. So there's a few others. So this is like a more modern one. You can see this is, a typology of T-shirts. And I mean, you could almost say this is like a street portrait, if you like, it's just some sort of variation on that. You can see these are less sort of consistent, but the theme is there. And here's even a more modern one. You can see these are sort of less strict. It's just a bunch of bicycles in Beijing. And the way they've been shot is fairly different. So there's a bit of variation in the way you can do it. Another one I saw, which I thought was quite interesting, is somebody had taken a photo of the last meals of people on death row, and they're all shot exactly the same way. It's got like the plastic prison tray with the food directly from above, and you put them all together. Some have got these huge meals. Some people have got like an apple. So it's just the grouping of those pictures, is sort of more powerful than just a single image, if you like. So that's just a bit of a diversion on typologies, I guess. Let's have another drink. So now I'm getting into, I guess, how I made the book. So like I said, I went into the city and I was trying to, shoot the 7-Elevens and just see what kind of worked. I initially sort of took in my SLR with a big zoom lens and tried to get different angles, and it wasn't really working, just because that was the sort of the way that Ed Richet had done his stuff. Like, it's a long way away, sort of at different angles, and I thought I'd sort of go for the same, but I didn't really like it at all. Came back and looked at them and went, there's a pretty boring, and there wasn't any sort of real consistency in there. So I thought what I would try to do is shoot them just straight on, like just get the storefront in there. I even thought about getting a tilt shift lens to try and get the perspectives perfect. I don't know if anyone's ever used one of those for architecture, but you can get the perspectives all to straighten up. In the end, I used my X100V, which I've got here. I'll just show you, with the little screen flipped out like that, and pretty much shot with the camera above my head like that, so that I could get them sort of more sort of straight on. So it's basically with that camera, the same lens, the same depth of field, shot straight on, and I tried to get them in dull sort of light, the same way that those mine towers, and I tried to get no people in there. And I guess what I was really going for, once I started to get those sort of a few test shots of that consistent style, I liked it much more. And I guess, you know, I know this isn't a book on street photography, but I guess the thing would be that once I got that particular style and consistency, that kind of worked for the book. And I think if I was doing any book now, I would definitely try to do that. And I've looked at it, as I look at more books now, especially on street photography, you can see that those ones that have that, you know, consistent sort of style, definitely, for me anyway, seem to sort of work better. So this is like just a sample shot of, you can see it's like dead straight on, just the storefront in there, you know, and I was sort of aiming for that for every sort of shot. Nice dull light, nice, I say nice dull light, but yeah, that was kind of the look that I was going for. So I guess the issues I had, because, you know, going into it, I was thinking, oh, you know, Ed Riche's look like they've all been shot on one day and took 2 hours to do them. But of course, you know, once I got in there, it wasn't that easy. The main issues I had was, although, you know, we were in lockdown, there were cars parked out the front of the shops. There were people, and, you know, sadly, although there were no people in the city, really, there was a lot of homeless people, and they love to stay outside 7-Elevens. So it's kind of sad to see that. That felt, you know, it was like me and the homeless people in the city, and that was it. And just getting the light and reflections right, you know, just getting it consistent to make it sort of look like it was all shot on the same day was tricky. And, you know, I talk about me in there, it was just trying to not get myself in the shot, which was trickier than you can imagine if you're shooting straight on into a shiny glass window. And like I say, you know, it took me a lot longer than I thought. I thought, you know, even though I still shot pretty fast, I reckon it took about 8 weeks to shoot. And the reason I did it that fast is because I thought that any day now the pandemic's going to finish and I would have lost my chance. And that was, you know, 2 years ago, so, or, you know, 18 months ago. So I was completely off the mark there on that. So it's like, yeah. So you know, maybe I could have taken a bit more time, but you know, I was definitely worried that I was going to run out of time and that, you know, things would go back to normal and that sort of window would have gone. So anything else I wanted to, just a little side note. I was just listening to this podcast recently, and had a photographer on there called Mark Power. I don't know if anyone knows you. He's a Magnum photographer. He did this book called The Shipping Forecast, and it was hugely popular. But he was talking about how he sort of had the same problem, which is the shipping forecast is a thing on the radio in Britain where they talk about the weather conditions in various areas in Britain, and his plan was to take one photo in each of those areas. So he had like a fixed thing that he needed to photograph, if you like. And he had the same idea, which was, you know, the weather conditions had to be dull. He wanted them all to look dull and grey and, you know, not much contrast. And he said there were lots of times he'd jump in the car, he'd drive to the location and it'd be sunny and he'd have to get in the car and turn around and go home. And I sort of had those sort of days as well, where it's just like, you know, one of those few things where you're praying for it to be cloudy. It's like, you know, I want the light to be terrible, you know, is what I was sort of aiming for. So funny. But so when it came to editing the images, I guess in some respects I've probably got it easier than most people making a book, because I had 27 locations I had to shoot, and there was like, you know, I couldn't add anything, I couldn't skip a store, you know, that was sort of my thing. So I just had to really just keep shooting and until I got the images that I wanted. So I guess my editing was more like, which version of this store do I like the best, and which one is more, you know, consistent, and then just reshooting until I've got, you know, the 27 images that I'm happy are the same. So like it says there. So initially I did this in Lightroom, you know, started editing the images down to, you know, the 27 and arranging them, and then didn't find I liked it too much. And I've heard this from a few other people too. So I started doing producing six by four prints and then just laying them out on the floor and looking at them and going, okay, that one looks a bit out of place. I'll go and reshoot that. And then I'd do another print of, 5 or 6 and then lay them out again until I got it consistent. So I sort of started in Lightroom. That's probably a good idea. I think just start in Lightroom, but then I found that 6 by 4 prints were the best. And I guess the sort of the note on the bottom there would be, I had a really small scope of what I had to do, which is 27 shops and just photograph them. And I've tried doing street photography books before and never got anywhere because it's like just crazily overwhelming. It's just, too many photos, start editing them, and then I just give up because it's, I just can't decide which ones I want to keep, which ones I don't. And just having a small scope for the project really helped. So I think for my next book, which hopefully will be street photography, I want to keep it small as well, because I just, thousands of photos, trying to work out which ones are good or bad and keeping them in, it's difficult. So I'm not sure I've got any answers there, but I guess if you want to do a book and you're struggling, I would try to just keep it small. Now, sequencing. So this I thought was also going to be really easy because in Ed Richet's book here, they pretty much follow the road. So it's the order, and it's not 100% follow the Route 66, but he hasn't put too much effort, I don't think, into the sequencing. And I kind of thought it would be the same, which is, it doesn't matter, they're 7-Elevens, I'll just throw them in a book and it'll all, be fine kind of thing. And, I started doing that in Lightroom. And it was kind of like the same thing. It was like, I didn't really like it in Lightroom. I don't know, it may be me, but I have heard this from other people too, that, as far as, sequencing, nothing really beats, prints or printing a book. So then I thought, I'll create a dummy book, which is just print A4 bits of paper, sort of staple them together, make it look like a book, turn the pages, and it will, that'll make it feel more real. And I kind of gave up on that too, because it didn't really feel like a book either. So I went to 6 by 4 prints, like I say, on the floor. So kind of like this. So what I would do is just sort of throw them on the floor, shuffle them around a bit, look at them, walk away for a couple of days, come back and look at them again. Can you see my mouse? Somebody give me a thumbs up. Like, yeah, you can see it. So as I was doing that, I started to see sort of patterns. And I know this kind of looks like the thumbnail view in Lightroom, but it just seemed to be better to just shuffle the images around. So you can see, like, I don't know if you can see where I'm looking, those two there look kind of similar. And these two are like a boring gray, which are the same. And then these two are the only ones that have black signage. And then, there's a whole bunch of ones that are completely different. Actually, this is the order of the book, by the way. But I started to see these patterns appearing in the book. And I thought, well, if I sort of pull these guys aside, I want to have those two together and I want to have these two together. And, those ones are kind of similar. If I pull them out, then how does it sort of feel? Sorry. So like I say, I started to see these patterns appearing and started to group the images into little sets, if you like. And then, so the next about the 6 images, and I wish I could remember who said this. So I was listening to a podcast and they were talking to this book editor, and he said what he did is he never edits more than 6 images at a time. So puts them into groups of 6, edits that bit, and then that's how they appear in the page. So there's like 6 images and then a break and then 6 images, because he finds that just image is, it's a bit overwhelming and it can be a bit sort of boring too, in a way. So although I thought sequencing was going to be easy, I did start to see these patterns and breaking the things up. And kind of like it says there, take your time. So, I put them down, look at them for a few days, come back, shuffle them, decide I didn't like them. And after a while, you sort of get, there's probably no perfect sequence, but you get to something where it's like, this one kind of feels right. And the other thing I did, because like I said, I tried to print a dummy book, and it didn't really sort of feel right because it wasn't the right size or anything either. So what I did was with my 6x4s, once I'd done it, if I don't know if you can see this, is put them in a photo album, in with the title page. So it became like a book. And I found that sort of helped too because it made it feel kind of real, and more so for, say, like ones where there's a little spread together kind of thing. So like I say, these things work for me. They may not work for everyone else, but I guess the upshot is I thought sequencing would be dead easy and I just throw them in a book, but yeah, that definitely was not the case. And I probably learned more about that than anything else. And this is the next few slides are just, you know, a bit of my thought process about that. So like I said, 6x4s on the ground, and then sort of grouping them. So like I said, the two with the black signage, I thought, yeah, I definitely want to put those two together because they're sort of unique in their own way. And then there was a whole bunch that were, you know, they were sort of completely unique. They were like a 7-Eleven that's not like any other 7-Eleven. So it's kind of like all the ones that are different. And then I just found other ones like, oh, you know, these two kind of just work together, like the footpath sort of lines up and the hoarding across the top kind of like lines up. So I kind of like those together, if you like. Now, because I was following the design of the 26 gas stations, I didn't have much to sort of play with. So the way I broke it up was with the double spreads. So most of them are like this, with a single spread, and then there's some with a double spread. He had some images that went over the boundary, but I didn't do any that way. So the way I broke it up was, yeah, to use the double spreads as the barrier, if you like. So I won't really go through this, but it's kind of like, I could see this pattern. So it was like the classics, a few classic 7-Eleven stores. If I imagined a 7-Eleven, that's what I would think it would be like. And then a double spread, and then a bunch of matching stores, and then a double spread, and then a whole bunch of stores that are sort of individual, and then a double spread and stuff like that. So this is kind of like if you roughly look through the book, that is the layout. So as far as sequencing goes, like I say, I thought it was going to be dead easy, but then I started looking at other books. So there's a couple of books just to sort of highlight that. So this is a book by a friend of mine, Mimi Malika, about photos in East London. I'm going to try and flick through this, but you can see how it's sort of image, and then there's like a break of a big image. And then it kind of goes like that all the way through. So there's like a bunch of individual images like that, if you can see that. And then he breaks it up with a big, you know, image and a blank page. So I started seeing this in books, and actually I got this book today from Sam Ferris, who's talked on here before. This is brand new, but he's kind of does the same thing too. He has a bunch of, you know, they're almost the same, and then there's a black page with some text. So I guess the thing is, I originally thought it was just going to be 7-Eleven, 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 just boring images in a sequence, but I definitely can see now that, you know, breaking it up and then having, and on a book with a bigger design, you know, you can do something like that. So, so as far as the design of the book goes, appropriated is my way of saying I stole it, because I just went for exactly what he had. And you can see there's his cover and my cover, his title page and my title page, oops, sorry, his layout, and if I can get this mouse to work, my layout. You can see I've ripped him off, and even the fonts. So yeah, I managed to find the same fonts that he used, and I've done it exactly the same. So as far as design goes, I'm probably can't talk too much about that because, like I say, I've ripped it off. So, and I guess the other thing would be, and it goes back to before, if you for your first book, maybe don't be too ambitious, and if you've got a complex design, making dummy books might kind of help. I know as far as Sam's books go, I've seen about 3 different versions of it, and actually some of them are nothing like this. So, and it took him, I'm going to say I probably saw the first one, I probably saw 3 years ago, something like that. So I think if you're going to have a complicated design, a dummy book would be good, but I sort of didn't do that just because I was really ripping off his design. So, all right. So printing. This is probably one bit I was most nervous about because, you know, I couldn't go to a printer, couldn't speak to a printer. I was worried that I was going to send it to them, it would come back and they'd all be too dark and the wrong color and all that sort of stuff. But it's actually was pretty good. So I did, like I said, I did it through Memento Pro. So I used InDesign, which is the Adobe software, and Memento Pro will send you a plugin, which for standard sort of books sizes, you know, you just basically put your images inside that. It provides guidelines, which I can show you in a little bit. And then they send you a text file which tells you how to use it, what color space to use. They send you a printer profile so you can see what it's exactly going to look like. Like I say, I emailed them only. I didn't never talk to them directly. I found it pretty straightforward. I'm pretty happy with the results. I mean, I think things looked the way I was expecting. There was a bit of a delay in getting the book out, but I think that was more lockdown, so I can't sort of hammer them too hard on that. You know, they kept promising it, and you know, it was a few delays, but yeah, probably shouldn't be too hard on because it was, you know, lockdown. So I'll give them a break on that. As far as I know, we get an AASPI discount with Memento Pro, but the type of book I was printing, I wasn't eligible. So I don't know if we still have that. Somebody else from the committee can probably talk about that. But when I went to apply for it, they said, no, you can't do it for this type of book. I think it was because the run was too small or something like that. Anyway, so the one thing I will say is, which is on there too, which is if you do standard sizes, so that's why I went for A5, A5 and soft cover. It was cheap, and standard sizes are cheap. But if you want to do anything sort of funky, and you know, it starts to get expensive. And you know, I thought, first book, let's just do something simple and get it out, and you know, hopefully I'll sort of learn something. I guess, like I said, I was pretty worried that you know, I'd send it to them, the books would all come back and they'd be wrong, or you know, wouldn't look good. So I was to sort of overcome that, which is the one step in there, which is to calibrate the screen. So what I did was I bought a screen calibrator. I don't know if anyone's ever used one of these. Basically, it's got a lens on there. You hang it over the front of your screen. It flashes a bunch of colors, creates a profile for your computer, and then you can see something that's going to be closer to the colors and brightness that you're expecting, or the printer's expecting. So the one thing I noticed is, and I've got a Mac and I've got a big screen, is that generally they're way too bright. You've got to turn your screen right down, and generally they're way too cool too. The images on the screen, you know, once I'd calibrated, was a lot warmer. So, but those things are pretty expensive. Like that was about $300. There may be other ways to do it. I know what I've done in the past is I've got prints done from Ilford, the film company. And what they would do is they send you a print in the mail, and then you try to get that print to match your screen, only for black and white. So there may be cheaper ways to do that, but it's probably worth calibrating this, or you know, or borrow mine, or borrow a friend's, because you know, $300 for a one-off thing. Well, you know, you do have to continue to do it, but I was just super nervous that the book was going to come out all wrong color-wise. So, I mean, once you've worked in InDesign, you put all the you know, images in there and the layout. It produces a PDF, and you can see on there it's got guidelines for, you know, where it's going to be bound and where the pages will be cut as well. So just to make sure that, yes, you know, things are centered correctly on the page and there's enough room. I was worried about, you know, the gutters being too small and stuff like that. But I mean, I followed their guidelines. It all seemed to work out all right. I didn't print a test book, but I printed a few pages and sort of cut them out and sort of, you know, sort of fake bound it just to make sure that, you know, it was the way I expected. And it sort of came out right. Okay, you can see, you know, the gutters were right. So I was just nervous about that being, you know, a first timer. So, but that came out all right. So after I printed it. What happened? How did I sell it? If you want to work out how to do distribution or something, you should ask Mike, because he's probably knows more about that than me, or somebody else. But I sold them all through Instagram, word of mouth. I sold some through CCP, and I gifted some away. But if you want to work out how to get into a bookshop, or I'm not sort of the person to ask on that about that. So and like Russell said, in CCP it won a couple of awards, which I was kind of a bit stunned at, because I had a look at some of the other books and they were amazing. So I was pretty wrapped in that. So CCP at one point they had a talk from all the people who had sort of won awards. And when I was there, two people one from RMIT, one from the University of Wollongong came up and bought copies, and they said they're going to put it in the syllabus as examples of typology. So I guess not too many people sort of do that, especially in Australia, that sort of photography. So I was kind of wrapped that they said that, and they seem to know all about Ed Richet and where I was coming from, because I think most people kind of go, yeah, it's a boring book of 7-Elevens, which sure it is, but a couple of other things. So I wanted to make this like the full-on book experience. So I did get an ISBN, and you get a little barcode on the back. It's a little bit of a rip-off, to be honest. I think if you're doing a little book like this, I don't think it's sort of worthwhile, but I just wanted to work out how to do it. There's something like $50 to register, $50 for the ISBN, and it was even more to get the barcode. So probably not worth doing that if it's just a small book for you, or maybe you're not going to do too many books. But I just wanted to work out how to do it, and also like you only have to register once, so for each book you have to pay that each time. The other thing I wasn't aware of, which they made clear when I did the ISBN, is that if you produce a book, you're supposed to provide a copy to the state and national libraries, which I didn't know that, but I did. I don't know how they're going to ever police that, but anyway, you've got to do that. And then finally, is that this weekend, if you want to learn more about making photo books, there's a bunch of Zoom sessions this weekend being run by the Ballarat Biennial. I've signed up for a couple of sessions. I know Mike Reed is involved in those as well. So yeah, I'll jump on there, and I think there's about 4 or 5 sessions, and I'm going to do a couple. It's all over Zoom, so it kind of sounds interesting. And I think that's it. Oh, there we go. Just a few final things. I guess I was been putting this off for a long time. So it was really, my trigger was the lockdown, and I thought here's a window of opportunity to do it. But I would just if you have any doubts, I would just do it and treat it as a learning experience. You may not produce your magnum opus the first time around, but you're going to learn a lot of things, and I definitely did. And same deal, keep it small, keep the design small, but just iterate a few times. I mean, talking about the Sam Ferris book, just because I'd met him a few times, and he just kept working on the book. He would turn up with 300 6x4s and lay them out, and then shuffle them around, and then show me a dummy of the book, and then a year later it looks slightly different, and because this was like his big book, and he's trying to edit 10 years of photography, whereas mine was I'm trying to edit 8 weeks. So I guess horses for courses, but if you just want to do a small book and learn something, I'd kind of recommend just something small, keep it simple. And the one thing I can't sort of enforce enough, if you only learn one thing from this, it would be that 6x4 prints are cheap. For me, it was the best way to edit. I would, print a bunch of 6x4s, go and reshoot, print another bunch of 6x4s, and throw them. If 15 cents a big W, and they can do them while you wait. So it's like, you can't really go wrong. So yeah, it's definitely, for me, it was the best thing. That's it.
Okay. Thanks very much, Chris. You did really well.
I was worried I was going to be too long, too short.
No, it's fine. I'll throw it open to we're throwing open to questions now, but I've got a few for you. What did you have to actually submit to the CCP salon? I know it was an online exhibit.
No, I had to.
But
I had to send them I think I sent them the PDF, and then I mailed them a copy of the book.
so
And there was
I wonder, were they judging on the physical copy then? Is that? Do you get a feeling?
Yeah.
Of that?
Oh, yeah. No. I think they were. So there was a small window where Salon actually. I'm trying to work out because I don't think there was an opening night, but then there was a small window after that where they had all the winners come back and they had all the books there. So I think they did judge on that. I think it was, I think the PDF was just more just, well, maybe they were going to reject some, but I had to send them in a copy, and it was kind of like, yeah, you're giving us a free copy too. So that's effectively what it was.
Okay. Well, awesome. I do have a link to that to the CCP website with that PDF link as well. So I'll share that.
Oh, okay.
If you don't mind.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I'll just stick that in the chat screen if anyone wants to have a look at that. And what else was I going to say? Oh, the lighting. Is there any particular time of day I know you work in the city, I know you work in Collins Street, using shadows of buildings, or are you aiming for a particular time of day, evening or morning? Or
I would go in the morning, because I think once the sun got high, I started to get more reflections. Whereas if it's low, even if the sun was sort of behind you, you didn't really get those reflections. That's what I found. But it had to be a sort of a dull day. There was quite a few times where I'd go in there and there'd be like a little shaft of light against it, or that which would kind of ruin the shot. But yeah, that's when I would go. I think I'm going to say 90% of them would have been shot in the morning, I think.
Mm-hmm. Another question I had on the book: what was the print run for that?
25.
Oh wow,
that's what I'm saying. It was small.
So they'll be worth about 10 or 15 grand in about 6 years.
No, I don't think so. By the way, there are copies available.
There you go. There's the plug. Very good. Now I love Besh's work of all of their like tanks and then industrial stuff and all that. And I often look at that work and I lament that we can't go into building sites or into mining sites and all that today to like we used to maybe 20, 30 years ago. And make some photographs there, but I love the 7-Eleven idea. It's like you can do it with, and also the bike book. You can do it with anything that's actually lying around if you want to make it topography serious. So no, it's great.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was it's always been sitting there in the back of my mind, and it was it was kind of one of those things because, like I said, when I first saw Ed Richet, I was like, I don't get it. And I thought everyone was going to say exactly the same thing. I don't get it. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. It's just boring shop fronts. And then once I started doing it, I found it was just way harder to get them consistent and the same. So you can wonder, for those you can look at them like, just the backgrounds are the same. They've just got these, mountains in the distance, and the exposure is spot on. They've just done such a great job. I don't know how long it took them to do them, but yeah, I appreciate it now.
Yeah, it's cool. And James sent a message here. Is the Richet's book? Well, there's a copy in the State Library of every building on Sunset Strip, and also the 26 gasoline station. So if anyone wants to go and check that out, that's in the State Library. So thanks, Jane, for that.
There's an online version of 26 gas stations in the New South Wales whatever their state library is called. I don't think it's called the State Library, but anyway. But you can see the whole book online. And that's where I sort of worked out, what it was like inside, sort of thing. And I think the Tate Modern in London, it's the same. You can see an online version. So if you just want to,
I've got a question here for Jennifer. Maybe I'll pose it to you. I'm not quite sure about the question in the detail, but it says, can you talk a little bit about the concept of typology? Is it about the concept or about something written? So
I'm not 100% sure what that means.
If you want to elaborate on that, Jennifer, feel free.
You're on mute.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
The concept, the word typology actually is about the written word. So when you talk about typology, are you talking about a way of presenting images in a sequence, say, or with a similar focus, or are you talking about something else?
No, I think there are different types of typology. That's why I put photographic typology, because I think that might be different to like other ones that exist in other fields. Because I think typologies can be to do with, you know, classifying animals or insects and things like that. This is more about, I don't think I've seen any that have any text involved. So I think it's more about you're just sort of classifying things or providing things that are, you know, almost the same alongside each other.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Okay.
Yeah, I guess there's another thing too that in photography that often gets confused, and I fall for this myself, which is confusing typologies with topologies.
I think that's where the confusion might be here, because we're talking about the TOPOL.
Okay.
Topology, not typology. So yeah, we're basically looking at the forms of or the geometric shapes or properties of getting a sequence or getting a group of things together.
And going online doesn't help, because it's really confusing there too, and people mix them up. So that's just sort of the thing that I've come up in of sort of, I think in the strictest form, we're talking about typologies and not topologies, because there is a movement in photography called the new topologists as well, which is, you know, more about urban landscapes and those sorts of things. Which I know a few people on here are part of that group. There's a Facebook group as well. So, and that's kind of a separate thing again. So it gets, the terminology is confusing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and I've just got one other comment as well. It was nice to see. It's nice to see a body of work with that flat lighting. Like I know a lot of people now, they're always looking for the, you know, like the cherry on top lighting, or the, you know, the photo that maybe something else if it wasn't for the light, but it's more like a study of light rather than photo. So I think to see a group of photos taken like that was something new and refreshing, really.
It's kind of interesting you say that, because I tend to go for the opposite. Like, you know, I went out shooting early this morning just because the light was so good. But you know, this was just the opposite. It's like, a cloudy day, and I'm sort of rubbing my hands together. So it was weird. Yeah,
I just think that I'm the same. You know, if you see great light, you grab your camera and run out. But I mean, you can actually take great photos in any light. So I just think it's great just to see it all grouped up, and it really works really well. So I've got something here from Terry. I searched 26 gasoline stations, and it came up with this article. Okay. Exploring appropriation as a creative practice, and it features Ruchet's as a reference point. So there's a link there in the chat if you want to check out more of Ruchet's work,
or how people have ripped it off.
Well, basically.
Yeah. So
I think it would be a good explanation. I'm going to check that out. So thanks for that, Terry.
I'm not sure if it's the same link, but I have done a little bit of research. There's even a version which is 26 gasoline stations in Grand Theft Auto. So somebody's gone into Grand Theft Auto and taken screenshots of the gas stations in there and produced a book. So this, like, I'm not original anyway in you know, appropriating this book. There are many copies out there. There's even a copy that looks exactly the same as his that somebody is selling on Amazon, and there's all these 1-star reviews because it's like, I thought this was Ed Ruchet and it's not. So it's, you know, it's weird.
Very good. Well, if there's no more questions, I'm disappointed that Mike hasn't posed a question tonight, being our resident expert and all-round nice guy. So we would have thrown you a few curveballs there, Chris. You might have dodged a bullet.
Maybe. Like I say, I'm going. I think I'm going to Mike's session at Ballarat, which is on Sunday. Maybe you should talk about that. But Mike bought the first copy. So he was the first.
I hope it was numbered and signed, because that might be worth 20 grand in about 40 years.
Yeah. So
Mike, sorry, I couldn't add anything more or ask you another question, because that's what you've done is perfect, you know. So I can't,
Thanks, mate.
you know, so, you know, you've done it the right way with sequencing. And I use cheaper prints actually from Officeworks, only 8 cents.
Oh, right.
Okay.
I'm going to get off the big W bandwagon.
And they do them overnight. So you just go for a walk in the morning, pick them on the way to.
I might try that next, actually.
Yeah, you would have saved yourself $1 something.
It is
You would have
embarrassing.
bought yourself a coffee at 7-Eleven.
But no, I mean, you know, I raid Officeworks and I pull apart scrapbooks and make them up to the desired pages, you know, by pulling out the staple and then restapling them. So if I want 64 pages or 80 pages, I just make up my own book by pulling out the staple and joining like 2 exercise books together with a longer staple. So, you know,
I kind of did that at the start, but I thought the photo album I could shuffle things a bit better. But yeah, I went down that road too. It's okay, I think. Yeah.
But the biggest thing I think really, I mean, I was a film editor, you know, making television commercials, you know, all my life, and what you have to do really once you start building a sequence, you have to go back and review what I called the rushes or all your outtakes. Go back and have a look. Is there another shot which is slightly higher, or, you know, the bands like on the 7-Eleven, I would, you know, if I was, you know, I saw Chris had done it a few times, but, you know, you start to go back and say, well, hang on, there might be another shot with that stripe just a millimeter up. You know, it just, you know, sometimes just a nudge or a bee's dick or a gnat's tooth, you know, it just makes it happen, you know.
Yeah, I know what you mean. My best thing was just leave it a few days too.
Yeah,
just
that's true.
put it down there. I like if you've got I wish I had a big cork board. You could just pin them up there and leave it, because I just left them, you know, in the kitchen floor, if you like, and then it's like leave them for a few days, have a look, shuffle 2 or 3, and then come back. And then at some point you go, it's about as good as it's going to get, I think.
Yeah. No, I've got a sequence running at the moment. No, and I've got a bed end, which is just a large box that, anyway, and I've got 64 prints on that. And every time I get up in the morning, I just look across it and go, yep, and move it and then forget about it for the rest of the day until I wake up the next day, you know. So I'm going to leave it there for about 7 days, just looking at it. And as you said, take your time and go back. Say, well, at the moment, one of the biggest problems I've got, you shoot something that's landscape and you want to go to, then you decide to make a portrait book. How do you do that? I'm learning that too now. And so I've redesigned this book. There's a great book. I won't tell you which it is, but because I'm going to rip it off myself, by Gus Powell, who's one of my favorites. If you look him up, he's a
I know him.
photographer. Anyway, I've got one shot I just cannot use as a portrait, so I'm using it in the book, but in a special way. It's going to cost me more, but you know, I'll flap it. I'll flap the page out. So, you know, but you can do that and now I bought an A3 printer, so I've tried it and I've flapped it and it works. So yeah. So I mean, like with anything, it's you get the right tools, you can do the right job. Yeah. That's all I'll say.
All right, thanks, Mike.
Awesome.
Yep.
I've got one, probably the last question here. Oh, yeah, it's a good question too. It's a nice one. And up on it's from Frank. He says, "So what's the next project now, Chris?" And he's talking about books.
Yeah. So once I finished the book, and I thought, you know, start a lockdown. I'll produce a book, and then we'll be out of lockdown by the middle of the year. And of course, that didn't happen. I just started shooting within my 5Ks, and of course, no people were around. So I've got a whole bunch from my neighborhood. I'm not sure there's enough in there for a book. Wait and see. So I'm sort of tossing up between that or just doing just build up more work and do edit of street photography stuff. But I don't think there's enough there either. So I'm sort of between the two. And then there's a couple of little ideas I've got, but they're nothing more than ideas. Like I haven't even taken a shot yet, but wait and see. But yeah, so it'll either be I'm thinking about a book about just in my 5Ks, which would be mainly Cremorne, or a bigger book on street photography. But I definitely need more stuff. So see how it goes. Just keep shooting, and then at some point you'll have enough stuff, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Any excuse to get back out there on the streets, huh?
Oh, tell me about it.
Okay.
Get vaccinated, people.
Yeah, well, hopefully we'll be out of this soon. I know some of our other states are. If you're joining us from anywhere else other than Victoria, you're probably in a lot better situation than us. But I guess we can leave it there. But thanks again for your presentation, Chris. If you want to see more of Chris's work, check out all those, or check out at Zunabar on Instagram, or check out Zunabar or Chris Brown on the internet. I'm sure that there's something out there on the interwebs. So
yeah,
I'm going to say this too, Chris, thanks for all your work in the past on the committee as well. You really helped AASPI along the way, and I guess you've been a big part in taking it where it is today. So thanks very much.
Thanks, man.
All right, and a few things to finish up on. Even though we're still in lockdown, Sitcom is still on show, so you head over to AASPI website and you can take it through the virtual exhibition. Also check out the AASPI YouTube channel for past speaker series episodes, and if you have not done already, subscribe. And I guess this
is it going to reopen, Russell? Can I ask that?
Sorry,
is Sitcom going to reopen?
Yeah, there's a good chance that it will for a short period of time. I think you just keep on checking your emails for that, because we don't really want to make any announcements if it's not going to come. But yeah, hopefully we can get squeeze a few more days out of it. So yeah, fingers crossed on that one. So yeah, the series will continue next month at our usual second Tuesday of the month time slot, and our special guest speaker with the very talented Diego Fidel. So that's 8 p.m. Tuesday, the 9th of November. Also next month, we'll be holding the AASPI AGM. That's on the 3rd of November. And as a current financial member, you should be able to, you'll receive an email regarding this, and you're welcome to attend the meeting. So that'll be another Google Meets meeting. So if you have any questions regarding that, feel free to send AASPI or Team AASPI an email. And like I said, Team AASPI was sending out an email with a link to the event. So check your inbox, or maybe even check your spam box. We've been having some problems with our emails going to spam. That's why we had a few emails tonight. So yeah, check your spam, and yeah, mark it not spam, and hopefully we can stop this nonsense. So that's about it. Thank you for joining us tonight, and hopefully we'll be out and about on the streets real soon. So stay safe, and good night. All right, good night. Chris, hang around. Hang around, Chris.